Fellas, good morning. How are we?
Good morning. Doing well.
Doing great. How are you?
Man, I'm living.
Are you doing great? It's early.
Yeah, it is early. It is early. Oh,
I'm only about a quarter of the way through my monster energy.
Hey, listen, you got to remember, I'm an hour earlier than you are, so I've already had a C4 this morning, most of the way through a Diet Coke. And these guys, man, like, I know they're busy and they work hard, but we could trade places and we could reduce our caffeine consumption. They can come run these shops.
I'm Kent with the Institute, and we're proud sponsors of this show because we wholeheartedly believe in what Lucas and David are doing for the automotive industry. Like them, our mission is to enlighten and empower the automotive community, challenging everyone to pursue excellence and achieve remarkable success. As a listener, you're a vital part of this whole journey of growth and development, and your participation is shaping our industry. And for that, we thank you. If ever you need assistance on your path towards a better business and a better life, remember the Institute is here for you. We'll provide a comprehensive assessment of your business, identify opportunities for improvement, and help you get moving towards your goals. And if you need any more reason, then we'll help you make more money, remove some stress from your life, and give you a plan for growth. This assessment doesn't cost you a thing. Feel free to reach out through Lucas and David, or you can visit us at wearetheinstitute.com. Enjoy the show.
Josh, you want to shop?
No. Sure don't.
Oh, all right.
I appreciate it, but that's a hard pass.
Hey, David'll give you one for half a honey bun. He doesn't even need the whole honey bun.
Mine.
As a matter of fact, he doesn't.
Did you guys end up figuring out? Did you guys end up figuring out what version of Windows you guys were running?
No. As soon as we got off that call, I stopped thinking about it altogether.
Oh, okay. I was exactly just curious. Right. I think it's Windows 7, me personally. I don't think it's even 10. I think you're back to Windows 7.
No. I'm pretty sure we're running 10, but I haven't checked.
Ooh, I see the ETI logo
10 to 11 was a big jump. What's that?
I see the ETI logo behind Chuck. See that back there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep. Very cool.
Anyway,
all right. So
speaking about Windows 11, we are currently testing all the OEM software for compatibility with Windows 11. So that's rolling out. We got to make sure all of those run.
Well, and so I know that you surely saw that there was just a patch come out for Windows 11 that blue screened every single device that got the patch. And they told everybody, like, hey, whatever you do, don't update Windows 11. Did y'all see that? Like,
no,
they said something like 50,000 machines crashed just like that. Anything that had auto update on, that was bad. Shut them down. So, and the only way to fix it was to...
My machine is Windows 10.
See, David, you were wrong as usual.
I didn't hear what he said. I'm sorry.
Are you deaf?
I don't know. It came in garbled. Sorry.
I said my machine is Windows 10.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. All right. So, Chuck, I'm going to start with you. Introduce yourself. We've been friends for a while. You work out at AirPro, and I'd love to hear a little bit about you. I'd love for the listeners to hear a little bit about you. You've been doing this for a while now. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I mean that I'm a lifer in automotive. I was hooked when I was about 6 or 7, looking at the bottom of Matchbox cars. So I knew I was going to be in the automotive industry all along. It's apprentice for a couple of grumpy mechanics in the 70s, fetching parts and cleaning parts, and just kind of worked my way through from there. Like we were talking a little bit earlier, at about 21, 22, thought I had it all figured out, and got my butt handed to me a few times, and humbled, and it came to realization that continuous learning is that's what you sign up for here.
Yes.
So what career progressed through, I spent some time with the Department of Defense in wheeled vehicle maintenance, component rebuilding, all that kind of stuff, and was very fortunate they had a college level learning resource center there that took advantage of. And after about 4 years, went back into automotive, spent probably the largest part of my mechanic diagnostician career with Cadillac for about 15 years. Then kind of fast forward through all of that, technician, shop foreman, warranty administration, fixed operations, service management, and then about 2008, when everything got crazy, found myself in the aftermarket, and again, I learned a lot of stuff about now all makes and models, just not the crest and wreath on a Cadillac, and got into consulting and then module rebuilding, bench programming to support shops, technical assistance, did some mobile diagnostics and assistance for multiple shops, and then started going with the remote diagnostics concept. So I've been involved in that now for about the last 15 years, and we founded AirPro. I think we just had our 9th anniversary, focusing on tools directly connected and providing technician expertise for shops that need that additional expertise, or that, it can be at one level, phone a friend. It could be at a level it's like, hey, we just need diagnostic assistance and improve that whole process.
Okay. So one of the things that is coming up a lot in the industry right now, and I know we shouldn't delve too far into this, but I do want to ask, because one of the things we hear a lot is I just don't see where I'm going in this industry. Now, you've had a long-standing career in the industry, and you made that transition from that dealer world or that service management world into the aftermarket, and then you made it even further, because a lot of guys say, hey, I'm aging out. I can't do the stress. I can't do the being on my feet all day. I can't do leaning over under a hood. What did that transition look like for you as you moved from the dealer world into aftermarket and then into the tool world, if you will, a little bit? Because I think it would give hope to those who are saying, what am I going to do when I'm aging out of the workforce or the field that I've brought myself up in? We take the trust of our listeners very seriously, and I hope that you know that when I say that Shop-Ware is the best automotive shop management system, I believe it in my heart of hearts. And now it's even better. With new features like Tech App, it streamlines the inspection and dispatching process for you and your technicians. And with massive improvements to Shop-Ware's exclusive digital vehicle experience, they have stepped their game up to a whole new level. So if you haven't scheduled a demo yet, click the link in the show notes and do it today. If you've already had a demo and you were waiting to finally switch, there has never been a better time. So click that link and get started today.
Yeah, I think part of that transition, for me was kind of hard, because I was getting to that point. I wasn't as fast as I used to be. My eyesight started going. It's hearing started going. It's I can't hear those brake squeaks anymore.
You can't give 2 thumbs up anymore.
Yeah. But that's what put me into management. But then also I had this realization, and when started going into mobile technician aftermarket there's a lot of people in the industry with a lot of domain knowledge that are very, very smart and still have a ton to offer to the industry with processes, those types of things. So kind of coming up with a continuation of that career with remote diagnostics, and I think we've accomplished a good portion of that. But and part of it was for myself. What am I going to continue to do? How am I going to, because I love this industry. So what am I going to continue to do that my body just can't hack the day in, day out, high temperatures of the shop anymore. So and creating that, for the next step and progression of the career in the industry. And part of having to do that was some of the tools didn't exist to be able to do that. So research and development's always fun. It's, that kind of like trying to diagnose that butt-kicking problem that nobody else can figure out. It's just another type of problem to dive into and figure out solutions for.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that stands out here is that it wasn't that the pathway was free of problems, and it wasn't that the pathway was free of challenges, but you just continued to progress and push forward and said, hey, look, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do it. And you went out and you found the resources to make it happen. Right. And I think that a lot of guys, and I'm not saying this to hurt people's feelings, but a lot of guys get to that point and they say, well, I can't. There's nothing I can do. I always talk about the Simpsons movie where dude's trying to throw the possum or the raccoon in the lake, and he walks up to it and he bounces into it once and he says, I can't. I simply can't. And, all he had to do was throw it over the top of the barrier. And so I think that it's that dedication or that commitment to like, hey, I want to do this. I am going to do this, and push forward and find the resources and find the tools that make it possible. And so I commend you for that. Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I got started a little later than Chuck, only because I got born a little later than Chuck. He's got a little bit of a head
25, 30 years?
Oh, I don't know that it's quite that many, but it's a couple years. But ultimately the storyline looks pretty similar. It started with Hot Wheels and Matchbox, and growing up in a household where I think the general kind of MO or SOP, if you will, was if you can fix it, you do, rather than paying someone else to fix it. And so, and I think that was just a means to an end, and that's just kind of how I was wired from an early age. What became very evident early on was if you got me a remote control car for Christmas, while I'm waiting on the batteries to charge, even though it came assembled, I'm taking it apart. I wanted to understand how it worked. And I wanted to take it apart and then put it back together. And by that point, the batteries were charged and it was ready to go and I could use it. But I wanted to understand how things work, and I still do. I started off, my car experience started off at 13 when I took, some birthday money that I'd saved up, and things like that, and spent $1,000 to buy a '66 Mustang Coupe that needed a lot of work, but that was my car and it was my money. And by the time I was 16, I was driving it. And I've owned a 65 or a 66 ever since. Like, I've never not had one. So probably a couple years after high school of not really being sure what I wanted to go do. Originally, I thought I was going to be in the military, and then I turned out. Then they tested me and found that I was colorblind enough that I didn't get to go do what I wanted to go do.
Right.
And so I pivoted and started looking at other options, and I actually I did a lot of odd jobs for a while. I intentionally worked for a temp service for a while and just took whatever they gave me every day, because I knew I wasn't ready to go to college yet, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so let me go find out all the things I don't want to do. And I did. I made a long list of things I didn't want to go do. And eventually I took a job at a dealership, at a Ford dealer in Orlando. And I started working on cars professionally instead of just as a hobby in the driveway. And went to school through the asset program, which is Ford's 2-year AS degree program. So I went through that program while I was working at the dealership. And then when I got done with that program, I continued kind of in that learning mode and took everything Ford had to offer and achieved a level of senior master with Ford, which is, I don't know, at the time, I think it was something like 700 hours of training that you've completed of their training in order to achieve that. And so finished that. And I think what started to change at that point was taking an interest in trying to figure out what the opportunities were around me. I was working at a Ford dealership, but I was pretty sure I didn't want to be service manager, service director. But that was the only real path at the dealership level. And this was a big dealer. This was 70 stalls, 50 techs, big store.
Holy cow. Yeah.
And so there were opportunities there, but I didn't think I wanted those opportunities. I wanted something different, but I didn't know what yet. And so I got the opportunity to go up to Dearborn and sit in some meetings with people from Ford, and that opened up some different doors. And before very long, I found myself working at the tech hotline at Ford. I picked up my family and moved to Michigan and did all of that. Excuse me. And so in moving to Michigan, that opened up new doors again, and started looking for, again, new opportunities. Unfortunately, it was a couple years before the 2007, 2008 kind of downturn. And it was at the same time that Ford was really cinching its belt. And the opportunities to advance sort of dried up for a period of time. And so it was time to pivot again. And I found a similar job at Audi, doing the same thing, but different company, different kind of opportunities, or at least that's what I thought going into it. And I was there for a little while, and a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, I'm over here at a company called Raytheon." I'm like, "What's Raytheon?" I thought they built missiles and, radar systems and stuff. And they said, "Yeah, they also do technical training development for companies like GM."
Oh,
And
wow.
I said, "Okay, well, what are you doing?" And they said, "Well, I'm a subject matter expert." I'm like, "No, you're not. You are not a subject matter expert in anything." And he said, "No, really, I am." I said, what subject matter expert means in this space is that you're capable of understanding how things work, and you're capable of explaining it to somebody else." I'm like, "Oh, well, hell, I'm a subject matter expert too. Like, I can do that. I understand how things work, and I'll figure them out if I don't, and I can explain it to other people. Like, I'm pretty good at those things." And so I went to work for Raytheon as a subject matter expert to start. And I was there for almost 10 years, doing curriculum development, and then leading teams doing curriculum development, and leading projects doing curriculum development, and learned a ton along the way about, different parts of the automotive business, because almost all of that was automotive related curriculum development. But not all of it. Some of it was working with the Ministry of Defense for the UK, or National Cash Register down in Atlanta, that builds ATMs and cash sorting machines, right? It was still technical training. It was just different.
Right.
So did that for a number of years, and got an opportunity to go work for iCar on the collision repair side of the industry. And I was their director of curriculum and product development for 6 years in Appleton, leading the team that puts together all the training material. Meanwhile, the piece that I left out was, when we moved to Michigan, the agreement with my wife and my kids was we were going there for no more than 2 years, and then I'd go back out as a field service engineer, and hopefully be back somewhere in the Southeast, because we were all originally from Florida. And so we were in Michigan for 11 years. We were in Wisconsin for another
Lord.
6.
Oh, my Lord.
And that last winter was enough. I couldn't do it anymore. And fortunately, got to know Chuck, got to know a little bit more about this company here, AirPro, and found an opportunity where I could join the team and come help out. And that was in 2019, and I've been here almost 6 years now. Wow. And my role here now is president. I think I've helped with, some of the growth that we've experienced over the last, 6 years.
That's
awesome, been a lot of fun. But, when I think about the question that you asked Chuck about how do you find kind of the alternative path, that's my whole career has been, but finding the alternative path. But at almost any step, if you'd asked me early on in my days at Raytheon whether or not I thought I'd someday be working for iCar, or at iCar whether or not I thought I'd someday be working for AirPro, or doing the types of things that came next, I think at every turn I probably would have wagered against that.
Right.
But you got to have a curiosity about kind of having that conversation and seeing what's behind that door, and being willing to take a leap from time to time, and get yourself out of your comfort zone a bit, and trust somebody else when they say, hey, I'm doing this, and I used to do what you're doing, and if I can do it, you can, kind of thing. Like you gotta put some faith in that if you're looking to make a change.
Definitely.
Sometimes it takes a leap.
That's a really good point, right? Because the fact is you didn't close any doors, right? And I think that sometimes what we do is we put a perspective in front of ourselves, and we have this vision of what life's going to be and what success looks like and how it's going to play out. And we close all the other doors around us, and we don't explore any other avenues. We don't explore any other options. And we say, if it doesn't look like this, it can't be success. If it doesn't look like this, I can't move forward. This is where I've got to be going. And if you close those doors, there's a lot of opportunity that's coming your way that you may not even have a chance to take because you've already shut your mind off to it and said, I'm not even going to consider that.
Right.
Well, the reason we're here today is to talk a little bit about AirPro, right? And I think it's best to put it all out on the table and be blunt about it and talk a little bit about what happened. And a content creator had made a video and posted it in a couple different groups, and that drew a lot of attention and it drew a lot of questions. Now, we know how the internet is, and it's not always kind. And sometimes the questions are not formed in such a way that it's a seek first to understand. It's let me attack you and then I'll ask the question. And so it kind of communication broke down in this thread. But there were also some really good concepts or questions that came up in the thread. And so Chuck and I had kind of bounced back and forth. And I thought it was really interesting because, Chuck's reading through the comments. And he said, hey, listen, I know this just went to crap and I know everybody's upset, but there's some really important things in here that is an industry we need to talk about because we don't want another John Eagle case, right? I know both of you well enough to know that neither one of you would ever stand for a car not being calibrated properly or putting a shop at risk or something like that. That would not be, you just stop before you got there. I know that. And so I wanted to kind of break that down and talk a little bit and get y'all's perspective on what happened. And Chuck, you were kind of in the middle of seeing it. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, sometimes, and you talked about it before, kind of how you're perceiving things and the perceptions and, people like closing down, with different doors. So and I think one of the things, and before we get into Augie, it's like I want to talk a little bit about the aftermarket and John Eagle with tools and processes and those types of things. So tools, processes, the way that we get things done and figure things out are always evolving. So, and initially we get instructions, and we get some instructions from OEMs to do certain procedures, and that's the way they figured it out at that time. Sometimes it's not always right. Sometimes it's spot on, but there's always this progression that's going on. And that comes with different tools, those types of things. So the thing that was kind of unique about with the John Eagle, something physically was done to that vehicle to diminish that vehicle.
Yes,
of the way it was designed. So structural things are a bit different than tools or processes or how you get to a solution versus how it is that that you make the repair. So, and there is, and I understand certain people, that you will see things about a new process. Well, that isn't the way I know. That isn't the way I was taught. It must be wrong. And that's where some of the comments come in, and people don't always respond to those things. Right? That's when they start to go off the rails, and I seen that. However, once you get legitimate questions or something, well, what about this? And, kind of seeking to understand it, rather than dismissing it, right from the get-go. I think we all get to a better place eventually. And sometimes, you got to leave some tracks through the mud to get there.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's kind of what I seen, and I'd seen a couple questions. Well, what about ride height? What about this? What about it's like, oh, it's just faking a system. So I do want to put, and I think Josh can expand on this as well, put some background on this. So when this was originally a concept, probably about 7 years ago, when static calibrations were coming out, We looked at the systems, looked at what it was that was happening, looking at how the system learned, and thought, what if this can be done to improve the process? And that's innovation. And we went through a series of tests and prototypes and all that kind of stuff, trying to prove ourselves wrong. Should we even go here? Is that a problem? And we kept finding out that things were going right. We were getting the results that we expected, surprisingly so. And we progressed into where we are right now. Now, I have seen some misconceptions, from and I see questions come up. Well, what about radar? Augie doesn't apply to radar. Forward-facing mono camera only. That's the only thing it applies for. So I've heard questions, well, what about Subaru? Augie doesn't apply to Subaru. We have a stereo camera that has a focal point at a distance. So that's a different type of system. So we have multiple systems. And where we got it today and the initial testing. And then ride height is another question that had come up. That's modified vehicles. I don't know if anybody's seen the modified vehicle testing from SEMA and the results that were done earlier this year, or the reports were completed earlier this year. So once you get into modified vehicles or lifted vehicles or changes in ride height, that's a totally different area than the approach that we started with Augie. Josh, is there anything there that I missed on the Augie piece and the aftermarket piece? Oh, I feel like I'm rambling on. I got so many gears spinning in my head.
Yeah, hey, that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on a couple of things. And let me say first, Lucas, I think you made a comment about whether or not either one of us would be okay with, I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit what you said, but be okay with the idea of an incomplete or an improper calibration. Right. And the short answer there is absolutely not. My name and Chuck's name are both on the patent for Augie. So do we have a vested interest in the success of the product? Yep, absolutely. Do we work for the company that produces it and services it and provides services through it? Yep, we certainly do. But at the end of the day, I want the car fixed right, and so does Chuck, and so does everybody else here at AirPro, for that matter.
Absolutely. I think it'd be asinine for anybody to sit there and think, well, people don't want to fix the car the right way. And I think some of that comes from some of the shops that we see in the industry, and they get this reputation for like, hey, I'm really just worried about the dollar bill and I'm really just trying to make the money, just get the car in and out. And there's reasons for that behind the scenes that I don't think we always take into account and we don't really look at. But I don't think there's a human being out there that would walk into work in the morning and say, I'm going to do something that's going to hurt someone. I'm going to do something that's not the right thing to do. Like, that's a very, very rare instance. Like, that's just not common. Yeah. So I think that maybe that's misguided. Maybe that's what social media likes for us to believe, but I just couldn't see it, right? And I know you too, and I know you would never do something like that. So,
yeah. And so when you take, if we start from that as a baseline and kind of build on that as the base setting, if you will, the premise of Augie is you take your understanding that a target is supposed to be at a particular distance and aligned to the vehicle in a particular way. It's all very specific. Okay. Yep. And I've used this analogy a lot. And so we'll pick on Rivian for a moment. Okay. Rivian gives you a 7-meter target length setup. So target distance is 7 meters. Okay. Which is 22 feet. Okay. And then it gives you a specific height, and it tells you to align it to the center line and all of those things. And then it gives you a tolerance of plus or minus 3 degrees, depending on which axis you're talking about, X, Y, or Z. Okay? So once 3 degrees, though, at 7 meters is 13.5 inches.
Right.
So that means you can be 13.49 inches away from where it told you to be, and it's still going to accept it. Potentially. Well, why do they do that? They do that because not so that the technician has room for setting it up incorrectly. They do that so that they can account for the need to calibrate. And what I mean is, let's say that hypothetically, the piece of glass has a little imperfection that's just in the field of view of the camera. You can't see it with your naked eye, but the camera lens looking through it does see it. And so that's distorting the what it views as the center point. Okay? It's giving you 13 and a half inches of wiggle room in each direction to account for that. By the same token, Chuck brought up ride height, or you've got the placement of the camera bracket, or the camera itself has an imperfection on the lens. It's a replacement camera in this hypothetical situation. All of those things are little variances that you can't necessarily see or control for as the technician performing the calibration. And so the tolerance is there to allow for that, because that's the whole point of the calibration. That's why you need to calibrate the car, is to deal with all those little imperfections. And so, but what happens is technicians end up seeing the benefit of that 13 and a half inches. And so it fails on the first attempt, and Johnny walks over and kicks the target and says, let me try it again. Doesn't measure again. He kicks it. And now it was at 13 and 3/4 inches, and now it's at 13 and 1/4 inches. It's inside the tolerance of what it'll accept. It passes. Good. Send it. Well, Augie takes those things out of the equation. You can't fudge where the target's going to be placed. We've hard-coded in what those measurements are. That distance of 7 meters, and that the height of the target, and the alignment to center line, and all of those things are all hard-coded into the algorithm. And so when it finds the camera and creates a relationship between the Augie device and the vehicle, and it takes all of those hard-coded values into account, it's now placing a digital target exactly where it's supposed to be every single time. And so if it fails, don't get me wrong, an Augie calibration can fail from time to time because there's something wrong with the vehicle, something that wasn't set up correctly. When it fails, you can't move the Augie device over a little bit and expect that you fixed it. Doesn't work. As soon as you move it, it knows it was moved. It redisplays the target. And when it redisplays the target, it reruns the algorithm. It reruns the placement of that target. And so if you've moved it over a little bit, the camera, the target on the screen moves over a little bit and goes back to the same position in reference to the camera that it was in before. Now, the question of ride height,
I did not know that.
it is a unique setup every single time it displays that target. And it's displaying the target at the location on the screen that it needs to display it to be correct for that setup. So, and it's taking into account the skew, which sounds like a terrible technical term, right? We're skewing the target. I'm just using it in its technical sense. It takes into effect the perspective of that target. So let's say that you've got a camera that is offset to the passenger side. That's pretty common. Let's say it's 10, 20 millimeters offset. Pretty common. Okay? Well, that means, but your target was still supposed to be set up on the center line of the vehicle. So that means my perspective as the camera is that I'm looking at that target technically from the side just a little bit. I'm not looking at it straight on. Augie takes that into account. So if you think about this is the target and the difference between this and that, now I'm exaggerating it, right? Now we're looking at it straight on. Now we're starting to look at it from the side. Technically, it's a little taller here and it's a little shorter here, right? It's just geometry, right? Augie's taking that into account when we're displaying that target. We're doing all of that math every single time.
So let me ask you this then, because I'm a complete layman, right? Like I know enough to be dangerous, and that came up, Chuck. It came up at ETI during the shop owner panel, because there was a member of the shop owner panel, very, very high-end shop owner, extremely intelligent, very good guy, would never do anything that he thought would bring liability to his shop or do something that was wrong for his clients. And he was taking the perspective of his lead technician, because as shop owners, we have to do that. I can't be back there doing everything for them, and I can't learn everything I have to learn. So I have to depend on my technical team to bring me that knowledge and say, Lucas, we can or we cannot do this, right? And so in this case, that technician had come to the owner and said, we don't need to do ADAS calibrations, because as long as I put that part back on the car in the same way which I took it off.
Hey, my name's JR, and I'm the guy that gets to talk to shops all day long, every day about what they want. And you know what every shop wants? More cars. That's by far the most important thing. It's probably the most important thing for you. So what would be the best way to do that? Well, we've got this package that we made to specifically answer this question called the Car Count Booster. It's catchy, right? It's literally the 3 things you need to do that will cover the majority of your inbound marketing, getting people to call the shop. It's having an outstanding customized website, having a really, really good Google advertising plan, and then also having a really good SEO plan. So these 3 things together are a really good way to make the phone ring. And not only that, but to get customers that are qualified. So this is our Car Count Booster package. I love it. It's very, very popular, and it's a wonderful way to feel confident about that inbound lead strategy. So if you want to talk more about it, we had scheduled a Discover call with me. I would love to meet with you, explain more about it, look at your shop, and see if we can work together.
It doesn't need to be calibrated. And so everybody in the room went, whoa, hold on a minute. Like, that's not the deal. Like, that doesn't work that way. And they went through service information. They couldn't even find it in service information, which said this calibration is required. And so we depend on them to tell us things. We depend on service information from the OE to tell us things. Now, as I've grown and learned and worked more with ETI and learned more about the manufacturers and talked to them, we're hearing from them like, hey, we know we got dealerships that aren't calibrating cars. And hey, we know that process doesn't work like it was supposed to. Sorry, y'all, let's figure out how to fix it. But many of these technicians in the aftermarket are looking at that and saying, that's the grace. That's the only way to do it. There's no other way. Has to be what it is. And so you're telling me there are other variances. There's other ways to look at this. So from a layman's terms, how does that Augie know what variance to look at? How does it detect that or calculate that?
So Augie is more than just a screen that we're displaying a target on. Augie has a camera that's looking back at the vehicle. We've got a couple of markers that we place on the vehicle. They're called Aruco markers. Okay. And it's a function of machine vision and machine learning. Okay. So we're using the camera that's on board the Augie. We call it the back-facing camera because it's looking at the vehicle. Okay. That camera is looking at the vehicle. It's looking at the markers that we've placed to help determine distances, right? Roll, yaw, pitch, and distance. But it's also looking at the vehicle to use machine vision to find the camera lens, the forward-facing camera lens. Okay? When it does those things, it's establishing a relationship between itself, the Augie device, and the vehicle. Okay? The vehicle inclusive of the camera, the forward-facing camera. So we're not just looking at the forward-facing camera, but we are looking at the camera and the vehicle. Okay? Now, we are making some assumptions. And assumptions they can have risk associated with them. But we make those assumptions clear with each one of our customers. We are making assumptions that the customer has done the correct things to prepare that vehicle for a calibration. Ride height, payload, fuel level if it's important for that vehicle, tire pressure, camera installed correctly. Those are all assumptions that we validate with our customer. Is the vehicle calibration ready? So we work through that process to make sure that the vehicle is calibration ready. Now, assuming that the vehicle is calibration ready, we're then able to go ahead and move forward and display a target. Am I answering your question, Lucas?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I'm going to dig in. I've got a list of questions. Go ahead, Chuck. I've got a list of questions.
Please.
Yeah, I was going to add another thing. What Josh was bringing up with the algorithm and the back-facing camera. So every vehicle that is in the database that the Augie is capable of displaying a target for a calibration. Now, keep in mind, the Augie is not connected to the DLC. It is just it is displaying the target based on the algorithm from the cloud attachment. Whatever tool that it is that you're using to command the calibration is what's interfacing with the vehicle network, so nothing's being changed there. But every vehicle that the Augie is capable of displaying a target, we have obtained those vehicles in the factory settings, and all the math is done in the algorithm based on the distance of the camera from the center of the front axles, the ride height of the vehicle, the distance from the ground, the distance from the front bumper, and we measure all of those vehicles, and then we test them from with the Augie and in comparison of the testing of the behavior from a full-size target set up with the factory. And all the specs that are programmed in are OEM-centric in order to display this theater-like environment.
Gotcha. Okay. So there were a lot of questions about some of this, and I think you've answered some of them. And we'll go through them here in a minute, and we'll begin to kind of roll those out. But it sounds like a lot of that has already been accounted for, and there's a process or there's a concept of, hey, here's how we're going to obtain the data. Here's what the tool will do. Here's what the tool won't do. So there's some soft skills or some soft side things that are important about this relationship with you in the shop. Hey, we're not saying the car's ready to calibrate when you put this on the screen. It's not. You still have a job to do. You still have to make sure the car's right. We're not. We can't be there to do that for you, right? And am I taking that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
There's work that the shop needs to do ahead of time.
Right. And so I think that some of the things that came up that really kind of tripped everybody was way that it kind of was replied to, and tensions got really high really fast, and so we didn't have discussions. We went right to argument on both sides, and that wasn't y'all. I'm not saying that, and don't take it that way.
On social media?
Yeah, social media. It's never like that, is it? And so, Chuck, just as soon as that happened, you and I had a really interesting conversation because you were talking about some of the questions were valid, and you're answering some of those right here, right now. But you also said, hey, I'm involved with SAE, and these are very valid questions. I'm involved with the calibration board at ASE or SAE, and these are things we need to be talking about. We have to get to the bottom of this. Now, you mentioned that there had been some testing done on the Augie and these calibrations compared to OE, and you just kind of brought it up again. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how that testing was done or what was done in that testing? Can you tell me anything about that?
Yeah, so a couple of things that with the SAE piece. So what there is a ADAS calibration task force. So at the structure of SAE, the board's way up on the top. So and I chair one of the task force, which feeds into the main safety system committee, and that's where. So this task force right now has a bunch of topics around ADAS for some common specs, common reporting, and that type of thing, because it really is a wild, wild west. And, with like multiple arrays of targets, that type of thing, and addressing all systems from radar, forward-facing camera, different types of targets, those types of things. And some of those questions with standards, commonalities, new technology is playing into what the standards are going to be that would eventually be adopted by some of the governing agencies, possibly NHTSA or something like that. And it's a long-standing thing going on now with the testing. And Josh was closer to some of this testing with the reports than I was, but we had 3 vehicles tested. I believe it was a Volkswagen, a Toyota, and a Nissan against NHTSA, Euro NCAP, and IIHS testing results on a vehicle. Now, they tested the vehicle. They didn't test tool, but before we presented the vehicle for testing, we'd gone through, looked at the vehicle, did some checks with ourselves, then we recalibrated everything with the Augie. Then we sent it forward to them for the same testing they do on other vehicles. So I don't know of, and somebody may have, I just don't know about it, but I'd like to hear about it if they have have gone to that extent. So if it's another tool manufacturer or another method or another thing has gone through that level of testing. So what, and Josh, I think you know it's that some of the results. I think we got the exact same results as we did from a factory end of line calibration.
Yeah. So we worked with a third party test facility up in Michigan. They're a separate test facility. So we contracted with them and just said, listen, we're going to give you a vehicle. We're going to calibrate it with Augie. We want you to go out and take the IIHS standard, the NHTSA NCAP, and then Euro NCAP. Okay. And we want you to take those standards, 3 different cars, three different test periods. We'll calibrate it with Augie, and then we want you to go out and evaluate it against that test standard the same way you would any other time. And so the IIHS is the only one that actually had like a rating system. The Euro and NHTSA NCAPs both were just pass-fail. And we tested against auto emergency braking and lane departure warning or lane keep assist, depending on the vehicle. Okay. And so we passed as expected, basically performed as expected with both the Euro and the NHTSA. And then with IIHS, it had the ability to get like a meets, exceeds, or superior, or something to that effect of rating. Superior being the best rating possible. And we picked a vehicle that had previously achieved a superior rating. We recalibrated it, and it achieved a superior rating again. So where there was a grading system, we aced the test, so to speak. And that included the nighttime performance of auto emergency braking, which is one of the more difficult tests to pass with IIHS, one of the more difficult ones to get a superior rating. And so that's one of the reasons why we picked a vehicle that had that result, and we wanted to do that test criteria.
Gotcha.
But if I can for just a second, let me touch on that a little bit, because I think the part of what we're dancing around here is this question that is one of the first questions that we get challenged with Augie is, well, it's not OE approved. It doesn't have any OEM approvals. No OE has come along and said, yep, we endorse that tool as, one of our tools in our service manual. And so first of all, I'm not aware of any tool in the marketplace that has all OE approvals. I'm not aware of any that even has 3.
Right.
I think there's a couple that have 2. And there's a couple more that have 1, and there's an awful lot that have 0. And so, why are we hung up on Augie not being OE approved if this other brand, and I'm not going to name anybody else's product, right?
Yeah, sure.
Doesn't have any either. Like, why is that one okay? Well, it looks the same. It looks like a Target stand and whatever. And so I'm more comfortable with it. Or maybe the Targets are resized, but they're not resized very much, so I'm okay with it. Well, like, I'm going to use kind of an extreme example in the other direction for a second. The OE service information back in the day used to specify what torque wrench to use out of the special service tools kit, okay, in order to torque the wheel lugs. And if I used a different brand torque wrench, was I not properly repairing that car? Or should the focus really be about process? The process of making the wheel lug torque to a particular spec, regardless of what torque wrench I use. Did I buy it on the Snap-on truck or the Matco truck? Right? And I'm not plugging either one or saying either one's not good enough, right? I'm trying to illustrate the point. And so, the notion of OEM approval is not easily attained, and it's not because it's hard to get the Augie approved. It's hard to get the OEM to want to even take the time to evaluate another tool. You take a look at one of our biggest domestic manufacturers in Ford, and I'll pick on them just for an example, just because I used to work there. But if you take everybody that is related to the service side of the company, right, and you put them all in a room, it'll be a really, really, really big room full of a lot of people that are whose job it is to make sure you've got the right tools and equipment to service vehicles. If you take everybody that's related to that same task of servicing vehicles, but for collision repair, and you put them in a room, you get one. His name's Jerry. He's a really nice guy. I suspect most of us on this call, if not all of us, have met him because he goes to a lot of industry events and he talks about what's going on at Ford. But it is Jerry's job to help write the service procedures, the repair manuals. It's his job to help evaluate which self-piercing rivet gun or squeeze-type resistant spot welder is going to get approved. Do you think he's looking for 2 and 3 and 4 options? Or is he looking for the first one that meets the engineering spec? And then he says, all right, I'm done looking at squeeze-type resistant spot welders now. I'm going to move on to the next task. And so it becomes very similar when you're talking about the calibration equipment. We may not like the option that the OE put forward, whether it's printing your own target or spending, buying it like it's made of unobtainium, in order to have to purchase it. And maybe we want something that is one kit. But generally speaking, they're not in the business of looking at second and third and fourth options. And so getting them to spend the time to evaluate the tool and get all the right people to sign off on it, because it's multiple layers of engineering. It's not just Jerry in that example, right?
Right.
It has to be vetted. Right. And all of those different engineering groups have to be involved in that and see the results and sign off, because nobody wants to sign off in a silo, right? So it's a process that we're working at, but it takes time. And I think that's part of it. Is one of the things that came up was that in that process, in that video, like right on as soon as the video came up, it says OE approved. And so I think that's what kicked off so much, is because people started saying, wait a minute, it's OE approved? Who approved it? And then that's kind of where that tension initially started in this video, and people started getting upset, is because then there was no response of which OE approved it, and the question wasn't answered. And I think that's really what kind of got us to where there were two sides in this, as opposed to, hey, let's talk about what's best for the industry. Let's talk about what's best for the consumer. So sure. I think that's where some of that started. And that's a shame. I want to be respectful of the person that took the time to do that, right?
Of course, yeah. I'm not saying anything bad.
No, I know you're not. I think his intentions were nothing but positive about trying to represent our company and our products and our services. But I also think he got a little over his skis about where his role is with the company and what information he has and what information maybe he assumed, etc.
Okay.
He is an employee of the company, and he's in a tech role. He's what we refer to as an embedded tech, meaning that we've hired him as a technician to work directly at a customer site.
Okay.
And we're very appreciative of the work that he's doing, and he's doing a great job for us. And I appreciate that he's got a social media presence and that he's leveraging that social media presence to try and spread the message of what we do and how we do it. I think he just got a little ahead of himself on what he knew versus what he thought he knew. And I mean that with all due respect.
Of course, he's a sweetheart of a human being. He really is. When you get to know him, he's a really good dude. And I don't think he meant to like spark something off. And I think that, a lot of it was personality and the way that he's always responded. Right. And those are things that I talked about with him. We kind of went back and forth and discussed this a little bit. And so I just think that, man, the internet can be vicious. Right. And so when I wish I could tell you that, like, hey, I would love to go and make the group to where it was seek first to understand and everybody slowed down and asked questions and did the thing. But we also don't ever go in and delete comments because we think it's good to have honest discussion and really dig into the discussions. And so, like, unless you're doing something really egregious, we're not deleting a post or a comment or anything. You got to be, like, super egregious about it. Unless it's David, and we just delete his post and mute him all the time because he owns the group, and so it's okay for us to do that. Now, look, here's the thing: is I went and I talked. David won't talk to me for weeks if I delete one of his posts. I'm talking about, like, I get silent treatment for 3 or 4 weeks at least before Dude will talk to me again. But so I don't know enough about this to speak intelligently. Right, I'm not going to tell you that I do. Like, if I went and got one of my technicians, they would have a little bit of information. But we're kind of just now stepping into this. We're doing calibrations on cars that we have to. But if we ever get into a spot that, hey, we don't know, or this isn't something, we just send it out, right? We're going to send it to the dealer. I've had a really bad experience with that most times because the dealer says that car doesn't need to be calibrated. We don't know what you're talking about. So, like, we're fussing as an industry because a tool is this, that, or the other, and even the OE manufacturers, dealers aren't properly calibrating cars, so I don't know what we're getting too up in arms about. But I went to a couple people, and I said, hey, if you can take all of this mess that's in this post and you can distill it down to a couple questions for me, what could you distill this down to? And I went to really smart people that really know calibrations. And so I got some questions, and I just want to ask them.
Okay.
And this may be too much for this type of format. And if it is, just say so, but maybe kind of give us a brief overview of it. But Mitch is one of the members of the group that is really strong in this area. And he says, if a measurement is incorrect by 10 millimeter at a distance of 3,000 millimeter, you're looking at 18 degrees or 0.18 degrees of skew. That same offset at 150 millimeters of skew is over 3.8 degrees off. How are you handling precision when offsets at close range will be magnified by the distance to the Augie? How do you handle that?
Okay, so we recognize the importance of the tolerances. Those tolerances, no differently. I mean, there's no secret in the fact in saying that our targets are being reduced in size. As we reduce the target in size and we reduce the distance to get to that target, we are reducing the tolerance as well. Okay, it's a product of the math. And so when we scale that target back, we are also dealing with the increased necessary precision of how we display that target. So the markers that I described earlier, I think I mentioned that they're called Oruco markers. They're markers that are placed on the windshield. The Augie camera is looking at those markers to determine pitch, roll, and yaw, as well as distance between the Augie device and the windshield, and then as a result, the camera. So we're creating a very complex mathematical evaluation of the relationship of the Augie device to the windshield and the camera, thereby the vehicle. Okay? And so in doing all of that, I can take all of those factors into account. Now, I can take it a step further, and we can show you on the select few vehicles that actually give you yaw, pitch, and roll results, like some Nissans. And I can show you that I can take a full-size target, and I can take an Augie target, and I can produce the yaw, pitch, and roll results that the vehicle will display, and we can evaluate the differences between them. And we get very consistent results.
Okay.
So not just passing, but very consistent and repeatable results.
I'm
By the way, I could have answered that question. That was a dumb question. I don't know this Mitch person, but that was a dumb question. Like, come on, like, think this through. Like,
well, you know,
like,
so,
at the very end of the day, what's this thing doing? It's trying to measure like the distance in this flat piece of whatever X amount of distance away. Like, that's all it's doing. That's it. And so can you mimic that when a smaller, like, was zoomed all the way up? Yes, you can mimic that. You just make the thing smaller. Like, I could have answered that. I have no idea how the thing works, by the way. I could have answered that because it's just logical. And that's the question you pick.
And you're
listen. The best argument, the best.
There's more.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure they're going to get worse. You led with the best one. I'm sure. Anyway, the best argument was ain't nobody's equipment OE approved. Oh, yeah, you're right. So why is the Snap-on better than the Autel, better than the AirPro? But it's not. It's all the same.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, well, the OE's got Bosch or whatever. Yeah, great. The OE's not even doing the stupid calibrations. So there you go. They're just scanning the car, no codes, and shipping it.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know that's happening. Like, we're seeing that. So, like,
100% it's happening.
At least
they're telling our customers they don't need calibrations. They're arguing with our kids. They're like, oh, I don't know why that shop's saying that. Oh, I don't know, because it's in the service manual, you idiot. Why don't you look it up?
We went through one yesterday that we sent in for a recall, and the client, it is a very, very high-end car, and we send it to the dealer. We load it up on a very special tow truck. We send this thing to the dealer because it's got a recall on it. Gets to the dealership, and they said, this car doesn't have a recall on it. And we said, ISTA says it has a recall on it. And they said, yeah, but if I pull up the VIN, it doesn't show that the car has a recall on it. And we said, could you just like maybe double check? They called us 4 times before they finally called back and said, we're really sorry. The service manager, look, the car does have a recall on it, right? So the car's been there for 4 days. It's taken us 4 days just to figure out the car's got a freaking recall that needs to be done, and it's a safety concern. And we're over here arguing whether, like,
I don't know where they find these people. I just swear they pull them off of like their parts store rejects, and then they're like, I'm going to go be a service advisor because nobody else wants to work 7 to 7. I don't care. You're working these guys 7 to 7, 6 days a week, and they have to like sprint out into the parking lot to go grab a customer every single time they pull up. And at some point, you're going to start picking from the bottom of the barrel. Because who else wants to do that all day, every day for commission?
Not I.
And sell what? Fuel induction cleanings? Because that's what you're selling.
Yeah, where does the service information say that you have to do an induction cleaning?
Exactly. You know how many phone calls I get? I get all day long. It's like, can you look in the service manual or in the owner's manual and point to where it says an induction cleaning is needed at 15,000 miles? And they go, what do you mean? The dealership said, yeah, the dealership adds that on because they need to make money. And they're like, why would they do that? I'm like, dude, just look in the owner's manual. You don't have to believe me. Don't listen to me. Just look in the owner's manual. It'll never say it needs an induction cleaning. So what are they selling you exactly? And then they get mad at me. They hang up on me. It's like, oh, okay, so you can't do it. No, I didn't say that. I've got the equipment. We never use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't need to.
I'm going to tell you, I've gone through this. I've got an ex-employee who works at a dealership and still stay in contact with him. Really good guy, really honest, really ethical. And he called me a couple weeks ago, and he was very upset. And I said, hey, man, what's up? Like, what's wrong? And he said, I just got a ticket back, and I've sent this ticket up to the front counter or up to the advisor, and they do video evaluations. He said, I saved the video evaluation on my phone. I want you to listen to the video evaluation. Car's got 15,000 miles on it, right? Brand new car. And all he had recommended was a tire rotation, and the video was, hey, the car needs a tire rotation. Otherwise, the car is in fantastic shape. It doesn't need anything aside from the maintenance services you brought it in for. That's what's on the manufacturer maintenance schedule, and here's what I would recommend. Well, guess what? He sends me the ticket. It's got tires on it. It's got a drive belt on it. Got a cabin filter on it. Got an engine air filter on it. Got a fuel induction service on it. Got a brake inspection on it. And he's like, I didn't recommend these things. And so for me, like, I look at my technicians and I say, you are my eyes and my ears. I'm depending on you to help me provide a safe and high quality product for the consumer, which is that car's going to be safe and reliable, right? And so you tell me what the car needs, I put it on paper, and that's the end of it. But in this case, the service advisors are recommending whatever services they can. And typically, from what he described to me and what I talked to somebody else about, is what they recommend is what they're getting spiffs on. And so the advisors are saying, hey, I'm going to make my paycheck this week. And I don't care if the client needs it or not. That's not my problem. I'm only going to be here 4 months. And so I'm going to head out. And yet we're saying like, hey, the OE is what we need to base ourselves off of. Now, I'm sorry, guys. I know y'all work for the OEs. I ain't trying to hurt feelings. I'm not trying to go there. But you see what I'm saying? Like, how can we say that's the goal?
And by the way, you don't need that ADAS calibration. There's no codes.
Exactly, because we don't get paid enough for that.
I can understand the hesitancy to jump on newer technology. I can 100% understand that. But there is a massive difference between some sketchy eBay tool that swears it works really well in hacking some kind of calibration, or you can, hey, back probe this into this PCM here and you can recode this, or you can change the VIN or whatever, with some sketchy Chinesium tool that is a little sketchy, jumping on that and being totally cool with that versus something that has at least like legit been around for 10 years. The company's there, right? And why would you like take the OE as the end all be all when we don't do that with like anything else?
Yeah.
The tool, like how often do you order a tool from like Freedom Racing Tools? They've got the OE for $1,100, and then they've got the aftermarket tool to set the timing on some car for like $300. What are you going to do?
Of course, and I
not buy either one. You go to Amazon, you buy the $13 Chinesium tool, and you're like, hey, you're going to have to make this fit.
Listen, I did
it's
that.
It's close enough.
I did.
You're going to use it once.
I did that with the BEW TDI once, and it did not go the way that I wanted for it to go. And
you know pretty quick, though. You're like, hey, this is supposed to fit into this slot, and it doesn't. You're like, we better order the one from Freedom Tools.
Why is the crank not at top dead center when I install the crank lock on it? That's odd.
Yeah, but you go and buy the CTA tool, right? The CTA tool is usually, a third of the price of the OE, whatever, Kent tool or the OTC tool. It's a third of the price. But you have no problem, and you're like, what OE approved that tool, sir? No, nobody did? Why are you okay using it then? You're going to blow up this engine possibly, right? I get the whole like, oh, we could kill someone with the ADAS. It's like, okay, I get it. But you could also blow up this $20,000 engine too, right? And when? Like as they're trying to pull out in front of a train or pull out in front of a semi, engine pops, it shuts down, you kill the family? Valid. Who's liable then? You didn't use an OE-approved tool. Use the CTA tool. How is it any different? But we jump all over the, hey, nobody OE approved this contraption you can hook up to the windshield. I get the argument. It was a good argument, by the way. You should have like really hammered in on that.
Yeah, I think all of us like really need to think about this with the OEM stuff and as being technicians and forward thinking and coming up with new processes to do things. So are we completely constrained and we only do what the OEM tells us we can do? Or do we use our technician minds and go, there's a better way to do this? There's a better way to take this from point A to point B and collaborate with OEMs. Give the OEMs these feedback with these different things. I mean, back in my early days, all my manuals were in writing. There was not daily updates. We had to write notes in them when we found when we found new procedures or new ways to do things. And also kind of want to add another thing. I am more worried about liability with technicians not accepting things and just like pushing buttons, hoping things will get done and not really sure what it is that they're doing and taking the time to understand what it is that they're doing, that or foregoing doing a calibration. The whole liability issue, if you know it needs a calibration and you don't do it or you fake that you did it, your butt's hanging out there way more than what brand of tool I use to do it and know that I did it. Right, so there's a much bigger risk there. And with the SAE committee that we're working on right now, and that worries me and worries a few other people. You take a dealer, we calibrated it. You have really no way of knowing other than the lights out and the guy said that I did it. So we're working on a report from the vehicle that is kind of similar to OBD2 that will have a record stored by the vehicle. It was calibrated this day. These were the mileage. These were the results, and these are the specs. So now you have an attestation that, yes, it was done. And yes, it met the specs of what's programmed in the vehicle.
So that was going to be one of my next big questions, because Josh brought up Nissan and some of the feedback data, the bidirectional data that comes back based off that calibration. And I can't see a world where there's two things that have to happen in ADAS for us, right? One is that we have to have feedback data that says it is or it is not. Right. And I know in some cases that can't really be done, but at least some data that comes back from the car that helps us interpret that. And it's not just calibrated, not calibrated. The other thing is, and especially when we talk about SAE, is standard terminology. Because I'm seeing there are so many different variations of terminology across the board. Every bit of service information says something completely different. And the system may even be manufactured by the same company. But this manufacturer calls it this and this manufacturer calls it this. And so I think that across the board in the automotive space, we need some more standardized terminology. And I think that would help us get us closer to the same page as an industry. And I think that's a lot of what's missing.
Shoot, I'd be happy if the parts book and the service manual called the part the same thing all the time.
You run into that too?
That sounds great.
Yeah, right. Like, how many times a day do we run into that down here? The technician will come in and say, "Hey, I need this," and we'll say, "Okay, we called the dealership, and that's not a thing." Well, aftermarket information says this. Okay, we'll go to OE and tell me what the name of that part is. It's the same thing that it says in our aftermarket service information. Call the dealer, and the parts department calls it something completely different. You know how many bad or wrong parts I got because I used the word that was in service information and did not call and walk them through? How many bolt holes does that have in it? What does it look like to you? Can you describe that to me before I order it? Could you send me a picture?
That's not even the half of it. They ends up consolidating a part that should be replaceable in the service manual, but is no longer replaceable because now they're like, hey, we sell this as a unit now.
Yeah.
So this part's not even available any longer. Like, that's not even a thing. It doesn't even pop up, and they end up sending you the wrong part because they only show this one thing that's replaceable, and the rest of it has to be purchased as one giant unit. Yeah, that's a whole mess there.
It is.
Did you have any other questions?
I did. And I'm going to just go through them real quick because I know we're out of time.
A juicy one.
With calibrations requesting wheel arch lengths or ride height data, how do you compensate for that? You answered that. We talked about NHTSA, and we talked about because they were. Just go ahead,
real quick on the wheel arch and ride height. We capture that as part of the process with the Augie. So the user has to input what the measured wheel arch height is at all four corners, and we're comparing that to spec. And if it's out of spec, we're flagging it back to the operator, to the person using the tool, and saying something's out of spec. You better go check the condition of the vehicle. It's not calibration ready. So
okay,
continue on.
Perfect. That answers that beautifully. We talked about NHTSA. They asked, and I'll just throw this out there, but I think you answered this, but they said what metrics or scenarios were used for testing to compare this, and how does that compare to the manufacturers? I think you answered that. Do you think that we've clarified that enough? Do we need to go further into that?
I believe. I mean, I've given all the information I've got available at my disposal. I think we answered that question. But if there's a follow-up and we need to go deeper, I can go pull out the white papers associated with those tests, and we can get into nerd level detail.
Perfect. I'm sure some are going to want that just to discuss it. So
sure,
you may get into that.
Some of these who don't even read.
I'm a nerd level. I'm a nerd level detail guy.
Yeah, so. Chuck can be your Huckleberry for that.
Awesome. And then the last one, and I think we've answered this, but I think it warrants just asking this as the last question to make sure that we clearly answer this for this person, because he was very adamant about this question. He said a calibration is meant to verify correct installation and properly align the data processing. If the target is mounted to the component that was potentially moved, how is this accounted for? And I think you answered that, but could you just verify that we answered that?
Sure. So listen, at the end of the day, we are attaching the Augie and its markers to the windshield. In theory, the windshield is what's been replaced, which means that the camera bracket was also replaced. And I won't get into the number of glass experts that I see on a regular basis that talk about the fact that you don't need to recalibrate the camera as long as you leave it plugged in. You turn off the key first, you disconnect the battery second, you leave the camera plugged in third, replace the glass in the bracket, and then reverse the order of those steps. There's no light, there's no code. The car doesn't know it needs to be recalibrated. Why do I need to? Right? This is the same industry that's saying, well, now you've moved the glass. How do you know it needs to be how do you know you're installed correctly? There's only a couple millimeters side to side, up, down, that you can install that glass in such a way that you're not going to have some other type of failure. Water noise, wind noise, just glass rubbing on the A-pillar, right? And causing a problem. There's only a couple millimeters left, right, up, down that you can have for variance. And that variance is easily accounted for in the process of recalibrating that vehicle. Now, if the camera bracket were installed incorrectly, either because you bought really cheap glass and it needed to be transferred, or it was installed incorrectly by whoever you bought your glass from, you should be checking rough camera bracket location as part of the swap, no matter what. Right? Regardless of whether you're using Augie or not. Verify that it appears to be installed correctly. In other words, verify that it's installed 10 millimeters off center line or something. I mean, we're talking an easy check with a tape measure. It's good practice. You should be doing that every time you do it, regardless of what system you're using. Because if it's not, you're asking yourself for a camera module cover or trim piece that's not going to fit, or a harness that isn't going to reach far enough, or any number of other things to be a problem, regardless of the performance of the calibration.
Got it.
So,
absolutely.
If you've installed a fresh piece of glass and that piece of glass is not installed correctly, and it's a millimeter left or a millimeter right, Augie's going to do just fine, and you're going to have a calibration that is going to work exactly the way it's supposed to work. If it is more extreme than that, you've got other issues too. Yeah. And so, you can create a scenario where Augie could, in theory, produce a bad result, but it's gonna be a bad result of a calibration in conjunction with a wind noise, a water leak, a glass breakage, a harness problem, any number of other things too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in addition to with the look back camera, with the looking in, so we're not attached to the actual components being calibrated, i.e. the camera. We are sitting on the windshield. The windshield's what was replaced. So the look back camera, the specifications, the Roku markers, that algorithm knows where it's expected to find that camera lens. So if that camera is not installed correctly, or if it's tilted to the right or tilted to the left or something's tilted, it's not going to find it correctly. And we've seen this multiple times with our technicians assisting. Your camera bracket's not installed properly, or your camera's not fully seated. Solve that problem right away, get it back in, and then continue on. Because at that stage, it's not calibration ready if the camera's not. But we've been able to pick up those scenarios and get them corrected very quickly from the camera or bracket installation.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to come on, talk about this, have some hard discussions. I'm sure we'll have more questions, and we'll definitely bring you guys in for those more questions and begin to have some dialogue, and we'll see if we can figure out a way to make it more interactive for the listeners. But I just want to say thank you for being here and being willing to be honest and talk about the hard things. If we missed anything, they'll let us know about it, and we'll bring it back to you. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I appreciate the opportunity. Let's just leave everybody with this one thought. All right. This is not what Augie does. Okay.
Yep.
Augie is not taking a fixed target that the technician is then lining up to the camera. This is not the process. It's a digital screen. It's displaying a unique to that specific set of circumstances target each and every time. And I think that's probably the biggest assumption out there people have, is that we're tricking the camera. And technically we are, right? We are tricking the camera. We are creating a result the camera believes is the same result. I don't view that as a bad thing. We're doing it without the space, and we're doing it without the room for human error.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, and look forward to talking again soon.